Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. Since 1996, when California became the first state to legalize medical cannabis, there has been a complicated legal gray area surrounding marijuana use. 40 states have legalized medical marijuana, and 24 states have legalized it for recreational use, all while the federal government had it classified as a Schedule I drug, the same classification as heroin. Late last month, the U.S. Department of Justice moved state-licensed medical marijuana and FDA-approved cannabis products to being classified as a Schedule III drug, meaning it has accepted medical uses, alongside things like anabolic steroids and low-dose codeine. Today, in our latest installment of our Law of the Land series, where we look at how the law impacts our everyday lives, we'll talk about what this means ahead of federal law changes related to hemp products set to take effect in the fall. We will talk about all of this today with two guests that we have here with us. Tom Herron is our guest in studio. He's an attorney with the law office of France Ward, LLC. Tom, welcome back to the Sound of Ideas.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joining us from Columbus is Megan Henry, a reporter with the Ohio Capital Journal. Megan, welcome back to the Sound of Ideas.
Thanks for having me.
If you want to be a part of this conversation, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram. We're at the Sound of Ideas. Now let's start this conversation with just some basic definitions or an understanding of what we're talking about here. We use the terms cannabis, marijuana, hemp, THC. So Tom, can you break down for us how those all work together?
Of course. So the simplest way to think of it is there's one plant, the cannabis plant. And that plant has a lot of different compounds, a lot of different properties within it, one of which is THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. That is one of the intoxicating compounds in the cannabis plant. And we distinguish between marijuana and hemp only by THC content within the cannabis plant. So under federal law, if the cannabis plant has less than 0.3% THC, it is classified as hemp. If it has more than 0.3% THC, it's classified as marijuana. And then coming later this fall, federal law will change and also distinguish between specific milligram limits in addition to percentage by weight of THC.
Okay, thank you for breaking that down for us as we kind of dive into the legal landscape here. So with the rescheduling of marijuana on the federal level, how does that trickle down to what happens here in the states, Tom?
Well, we don't know yet. So the final order issued by the Department of Justice effectively said marijuana that is produced or dispensed by a company that holds a state license to produce or dispense marijuana for medicinal purposes is now a Schedule III drug. And the DEA has just opened up an ability for medical marijuana companies to register with the DEA, which will now put them, if and when that registration is ultimately approved, squarely in compliance with federal law, which is a huge sea change. The one thing that we don't know yet specific to Ohio is that after Issue 2 passed and the state legalized adult use marijuana, Ohio now does not have a distinct or separate license for medical marijuana license holders as opposed to adult use licenses for adult use operators. Ohio just has what we call a dual use license system. So it is one license that authorizes a company to sell and produce both medical marijuana and adult use marijuana. So it's not clear yet how the DEA will apply this new order to states like Ohio that don't have, either are not medical only or that don't have separate licenses for medical or adult use operators. Now there is a process that will begin later this summer. The first hearing with the DEA is on June 29th to fully reschedule marijuana. So there is some thought, maybe optimistic, that by the end of the summer or by the end of the year, both medical marijuana and adult use marijuana will be rescheduled to Schedule III. So we won't have that dichotomy and distinction between medical and adult use markets.
Is Ohio unique in that it doesn't have the separate licensure?
It's not the only state that does its licensure like that. I believe in Maryland, when you get a license, they're legal both for medicinal and adult use purposes. It's just a marijuana license. So they don't even call it a dual use license. Some states, though, have kept their different licensure system and distinguished between medical and adult use. And what you tend to see in those states is that the medical marijuana sales and licensure drops as the adult use market matures. So one of the interesting facets of this social experiment will be, what does that mean for consumer preferences? What does that mean for licensure? Do we start seeing, medical marijuana licenses be more preferred? So in California, for instance, the state put out guidance that said, hey, we're basically going to issue everybody who wants it a medical marijuana license so that they can take advantage of this new process.
Does this have any implication on criminal records that might already be existing related to marijuana use?
Probably not on existing convictions, but it could have a huge impact from a consumer perspective. One of the ways that comes immediately to mind are employee protections, right? The law has been, at least at the federal level, that the Americans with Disabilities Act does not require employees to provide reasonable accommodations to medical marijuana patients because that's a federal law, and marijuana, up until very recently, has been a Schedule I drug under federal law. So courts have said the ADA does not apply. We don't really know yet how that's going to change with the move to Schedule III. There may very well be requirements for companies to provide reasonable accommodations to medical marijuana patients. What those reasonable accommodations look like, we don't know. That's probably something that will end up getting sorted out in court. But if I were an employer, I would be calling my labor council and asking for reviews of employee handbooks and drug use policies to try to get ahead of these issues.
Now, Megan, here in Ohio, Senate Bill 56 deals with intoxicating hemp products. It took effect as law in March, and it's being challenged in court. So can you remind our audience about that bill and give us an update on the lawsuits that you're following, one of which happening in Franklin County?
Yes, Senate Bill 56, as you mentioned, took effect a couple months ago. It's a very it was a very big bill that is now law. It does affect Ohio's marijuana law a little bit, which we probably get into later. But yes, it also very much affects hemp and intoxicating hemp products. And so it essentially aligns Ohio's laws with what is going to happen federally later in the year. And so it effectively bans intoxicating hemp products in Ohio. They have been banned since this law took effect in March, and this also includes THC and CBD beverages as well, which became quite popular around this time last year. And so essentially what the lawmakers did was they were trying to find a way to have intoxicating hemp products be legal, but then when the federal lawmakers voted to reopen the government during the shutdown this past fall, policymakers closed essentially what is called this loophole in the 2018 Farm Bill that allowed for low-level THC products to be sold without regulation. So that was kind of a mouthful, but there's just a lot to this new law.
And what about the lawsuit in Franklin County, Megan? Have you been following that?
Yes. So when this new law took effect in March, there were several lawsuits across the state that were filed, and I've been following one in Franklin County, in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas that is on behalf of a couple businesses here in Ohio, as well as some out-of-state businesses that sell products or previously sold products here in Ohio. And they did get a temporary restraining order for a brief period in April, which allowed a couple of these businesses to be able to sell off their products because they were arguing that we have all these products, but we can't do anything with them. Now it's against the law. And so they were briefly able to sell their products, but then that was stayed in the Court of Appeals. And so it is currently being heard in court.
Okay, we'll continue to follow that. Now, Tom, as we talk about Senate Bill 56, it talks about THC and CBD infused beverages. So we explained what THC was. What's CBD? How does that play into it?
Yeah, so CBD, or cannabidiol, is a non-intoxicating compound that is found in the cannabis plant. And so when Congress passed the 2018 Farm Bill, you saw a proliferation of CBD products. Those were the first products out of the gate after the 2018 Farm Bill passed. Tinctures and CBD gummies and CBD creams. Those products are non-intoxicating. But very quickly, industry operators found out, we can actually take hemp-derived CBD, we can utilize a chemical process and convert it into intoxicating compounds like Delta 9 THC or Delta 8 THC. And then the industry went a step further and said, the Farm Bill really only talks about Delta 9 THC. There are many different types of THCs and many different types of intoxicating compounds. And then you started to see a proliferation of intoxicating hemp products that were at least arguably compliant with the Farm Bill because they had the required amount of Delta 9 THC in the plant. They were below the threshold in those products. But they had other compounds that were intoxicating, like Delta 8 THC or some of these other compounds. And that is what Senate Bill 56 and the appropriations bill that was passed this past fall by Congress are trying to prevent the sale of.
Okay. Have you seen reaction to Senate Bill 56 pushback in the space that you're working in? What are you seeing reaction to these types of lawsuits that have been filed against it here in Ohio?
Yeah, so clearly the folks who were operating in the hemp space are not happy with Senate Bill 56. But as Megan said, the changes to the hemp space in Ohio under Senate Bill 56 are aligning with changes that Congress had already passed that go into effect this coming November. The products that these litigants are suing over will already be illegal under federal law in a few months.
Okay. Megan, let's talk a little bit more about that. How will that law impact manufacturers here on the state level, the upcoming expected changes to federal law related to hemp products?
Yeah, so as Tom was saying, Ohio is basically now aligned with what the federal policy will be. And so when Congress enacted this law in this past fall in November, they basically said in a year from now, this law will go into effect. However, states can, in the meantime, make their own laws if they want to go ahead and basically ban it before before the federal ban goes into effect, go for it. And so that's basically what Ohio did. And so in this court hearing I went to for the case I was mentioning earlier, I was at last week, the plaintiffs were arguing how this is effectively destroyed or is destroying their business because they can no longer sell these products.
Megan, have you been following the case in Sandusky at all?
A little bit. I understand that in April, a judge there in a different lawsuit that was filed granted a temporary restraining order in the city of Fremont, saying that these products can be sold as well. I've not seen the latest. This was about a month or so ago. But the hope in that case, the plaintiffs were hoping that this would potentially have a statewide impact as well. So it's not just, so the hope would that be, it would be more than just Fremont, the city of Fremont in Northwest Ohio. That has not happened on a statewide level. But I would have to go back. Maybe Tom, I don't know if you would know more up-to-date information on that case.
Yeah, that's right. In that case, my understanding is the court issued a temporary restraining order, and the matter is now teed up for what's called a preliminary injunction, which is basically just an order from a court. If the court finds that the plaintiff is likely to succeed on the merits, there's no harm to third parties, et cetera, the harm would be irreparable to the plaintiff, a court can basically put an order on that says, hey, I think the plaintiff's going to win this case, so we're going to give them some relief while the case plays out until we actually get through to a trial. That Sandusky case is interesting to me because it's really, it seems to me, attacking more than just the sale of hemp products in the state. I mean, the plaintiff's position in that case seems to be Ohio has a regulated marijuana system set up like every other state. That market is an intrastate market. You have to grow marijuana, process it, and sell it all within Ohio. Just like in Michigan, you have to grow, process, and sell it only within Michigan. And you can't sell those products from license holder to license holder between those respective states. The plaintiff in the Sandusky County case appears to me to be arguing that licensure framework violates what's called the Dormant Commerce Clause, which is a doctrine that it prevents states from enacting policies in private markets to protect its own citizens and their economic, benefit from residents of other states. If the plaintiff is successful in arguing that, it could completely upend the marijuana market as we know it, and has been legal in various states for the last 20 some years, and create a fully interstate market for marijuana. And so this judge is faced with the question of basically being the first judge in the country to create an interstate marijuana market, it seems to me, if the plaintiff is successful.
One piece of this is also that they hope to have this classified as a reverse class action case. So they're hoping that this will apply to defendants all over the state of Ohio. Can you explain reverse class action for us, Tom?
Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit out ahead of my skis here, but as I understand it, the plaintiff initially sued, I believe, as the Fremont Police Department, and said, you can't enforce this law against us. You can't come in and raid our businesses. But now we want this law to apply to every other potential defendant throughout the state. I candidly don't know if that's permitted under the normal class action rules. It would seem there may be some due process issues that are implicated there. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
It will be interesting to see in Fremont, in Sandusky County, what this could mean for the rest of the country as we take a look at this. Megan, I want to ask you about Senate Bill 56 a bit more here. Ohioans for Cannabis Choice tried to get a referendum in front of voters to just completely get SB 56 off the books. What happened there?
Yeah, so they were up against, a tight deadline when this law, or when Governor DeWine signed this bill into law back in late December, just before Christmas. I heard that there was going to be a referendum effort in the new year, and so this group came together called Ohioans for Cannabis Choice. Came together, and there's steps you have to take in order to get a referendum on the ballot, and so they initially. They were denied with some of their language by the Ohio Attorney General's office, and they had to go back through and do the whole process over again, rewrite, make some changes. And so that got approved in February by Attorney General Yost. But however, when the law takes effect, when the governor signs the bill for the law to take effect in 90 days, that basically starts the clock for a referendum effort. They have to get enough, go through these procedural processes, and get enough signatures within that 90 days before the law takes effect. In theory, if they get enough signatures, that would stay the law, and then it would go on to the ballot and have it up to voters to decide what to do. And so they were already up against a tight deadline, especially not getting the go-ahead to get signatures until February. And then they're up against this tight deadline. They had paid petitioners as well as volunteers. They actually published a story this morning basically explaining how there was an issue with some of the paid petitioners receiving all their payments in full or getting paid for the work that they did, but essentially they just did not get enough signatures. I've heard some conflicting reports of how many signatures were gathered, but at the end of the day, they just did not collect enough signatures by the time that they had to for the referendum.
We did also see Senate Bill 56 getting pushed back about Ohio legislatures cracking down on bringing marijuana into Ohio from other states, for example, Michigan, which is right next door to us, where marijuana use has been legal longer for the adult use perspective of it and is considerably less expensive. So, Tom, can you talk about what we're looking at in terms of that landscape now?
Yeah, so Senate Bill 56 certainly, in my mind, included some unfortunate changes to what voters passed in November, one of which is, under Issue 2, marijuana possession was legalized up to certain limits of possession. And part of the goal was that, we know that for decades, marijuana prohibition has been enforced in a discriminatory manner. You're much more likely to be prosecuted for marijuana possession if you're black or brown, as opposed to, a white kid from the suburbs. The data is pretty clear on that. Issue 2 was designed to address that that problem. It was designed to address what are called pretextual traffic stops, right, where somebody gets pulled over and there's an odor of marijuana in the car. Somebody sees marijuana. Next thing you know, somebody's pulled out of the car on the side of the road. Car gets searched, etc. One of the changes that Senate Bill 56 made was it required or specified that the possession of marijuana is only legal if it's purchased from an Ohio dispensary. It also says that the transportation of marijuana in a car is only legal if it's either in the original unopened package from a dispensary or if you store it in the trunk of your car. So let's think about how that plays out in practice, right? Somebody gets pulled over. Officer walks up to the driver's side window. There's a package of marijuana on the front seat. Well, now that officer has the ability to inquire, where'd you get it? Is it original? Is it unopened? Did you buy it from Ohio? And it creates this environment that Issue 2 was designed to prevent, right? So there are some pretty major changes under Senate Bill 56 from the consumer standpoint. Now, that being said, consumers still have wide access to safe, regulated, tested marijuana products at state-licensed dispensaries in a vibrant adult use market. Last year, I think it was over $820 million of adult use marijuana was purchased by consumers. That's a good thing, right? Issue 2 and the legalization of adult use marijuana, more generally, it tends to not create new consumers, but you transition consumers away from an unregulated market into a regulated market, right? You take money out of the hands of drug dealers and you put it into a safe, tested, and regulated market.
Let's talk about a campaign that is hoping to make some changes to Senate Bill 56 here, particularly related to the THC and CBD infused drinks. Megan, I'll ask you first. The Save Ohio Beverages campaign, Save Ohio Bevs campaign, they actually think that the federal changes that are supposed to come to hemp in November won't be happening. Have you heard anything about that, about any lawmakers working to actually not have these changes that are supposed to be come to all the states?
I haven't followed that quite yet. I will comment and say how originally in 756 that the lawmakers passed originally did have a carve out for the THC beverages, but Governor DeWine line item vetoed that when he signed Senate Bill 56 into law. And I do know that a lot of breweries that I talked to who sold these products in Ohio were optimistic that there was going to be some changes at either the federal level or the state level, or there's going to be some way that these products were going to be sold at some point down the road. So some folks that I've talked to, as Senate Bill 56 was about to take effect, they were cautiously optimistic that there would be a way for these products to be sold down the road at some point. So I don't know the latest on their efforts, but
okay.
I will be doing
following
some
up on it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Megan. Have you heard anything about this potentially not coming down at the federal level, Tom?
Yeah, we've heard rumblings, and again, another one of the unfortunate things that happened with Senate Bill 56 is Senate Bill 56 had a pathway for the sale of hemp-infused beverages, sort of as a carve-out to the general prohibition on the sale of intoxicating hemp products. I mean, Senate Bill 56, the change under federal law, this was largely a reaction to intoxicating hemp companies selling high-potency products at gas stations, vape shops, in ways that were attractive to children, right? You saw knockoff Nerd gummies and other knockoffs of candy products that were high-potency THC products, and they were being sold to children. In a lot of these places as well, what you saw was diversion of actual marijuana from state markets into these hemp shops. Those things did not happen with adult use beverages, right? They're sold by retailers, liquor license permits, permitted places to people who are over 21. We know how to regulate that market. So I do hope that there is a change under federal law and then commensurately under state law to allow a pathway for hemp-infused beverages.
Okay. Thank you for the time in this conversation today in our Law of the Land series. Tom Herron, attorney with France Ward LLC. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Megan Henry with Ohio Capital Journal. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break now. On the other side of this, we will bring you the menu, and we're talking about Canton's Greek Festival. Opa! You're with the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. Historians say the first Greek families began immigrating to Northeast Ohio in the 1880s and 1890s, building communities that helped shape neighborhoods, churches, businesses, and the food scene. In Cleveland, that history is reflected in landmarks like the Greek Cultural Garden and in traditions like the Tremont Greek Festival that's drawn crowds for more than 50 years. In Akron, Greek heritage is celebrated each fall during the Annunciation Greek Festival, where visitors gather for traditional music, dancing, and dishes passed down through generations. And for this installment of the menu, in collaboration with Cleveland Magazine, we're turning our attention to the Canton Greek Festival that is coming up here in the first week of June. With me in studio, we have Georgia Paxos, marketing coordinator at the Canton Greek Festival. Georgia, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you want to be a part of this conversation, maybe you have a favorite Greek dish or a favorite Greek tradition you'd like to share, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, if you're watching us on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page or on the Ohio channel, you may have noticed there are delicious snacks here with us in studio. So, Georgia, tell us a bit about what you've brought with us today.
Sure. So this morning we have a pasticcio, which is a Greek lasagna type dish, especially it's a lot of comfort food, especially for a dreary morning like today. We also have some butter twist cookies, which are koulourakia. We have some almond cookies, which are amygdalota. And then we have diplos, which is a fried dough topped with syrup and crushed walnuts.
Oh, and you're getting a shot of that on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page right now if you want to check that out. Also on the Ohio channel. I'm going to try this fried dough.
Oh, please do. Please do.
And describe this for me again.
So it is a thin dough that's rolled out and then cut and then fried and then folded together and then topped with a light syrup and crushed walnuts. It's one of my favorites.
Very crispy,
yes.
Very sweet, very delicious.
Yes.
That's my official review of it.
Wonderful.
What are the most popular dishes at the festival, Georgia?
So there's lots of food options at the Canton Greek Fest, and all of the recipes are passed on generations and generations in our church. And so there are baked items like a lamb shank and this pasticcio and a moussaka that's very popular. Also our baked fish item, our plaki is also very popular, and those are all available in our indoor dining. Our outdoor dining area has more of a grilled menu, so lamb chops and souvlaki, chicken and pork souvlaki, everybody's favorite gyros, always available everywhere at the festival. And then we have lots and lots of pastries. Our pastry room is available inside our cultural center, and this is just a very small sample of all of the pastries that are available at the Canton Greek Fest.
Being from Canton, I have been to the Canton Greek
Nice.
Festival, so I can absolutely co-sign that this is a very small sampling
Yes.
of the pastries
Yes.
that you might be able to snack on while you're there.
We feel through our food, we celebrate our culture, and we are open to our community to come and enjoy and experience a little part of Greece right in Canton, right at the corner of 25th and Harvard, right off of Route 30, super convenient. St. Hieronymus is well known. It was a church that physically moved from its original location to its current location, so there's lots of things to do at the festival. We want you to eat. I feel like food is love, so we want you guys to eat a lot, but also come and experience, have a tour of the church and learn more about that history and learn more about the Orthodox faith. We have our amazing St. Hieronymus Hellenic dancers that perform throughout the entire festival, all 3 days. We have a wine tasting room, and we have a kids playground, and we have a face painter, and we have cooking demos, and we have merchandise. There's just a lot of opportunities, like I said, to come and experience the Canton Greek Fest all 3 days. And then we also have a drive-through. If you're running errands or you don't have as much time as we'd like you to have, you can swing through the drive-through and either order in advance or order in person. So we hopefully have all parts covered, but it's really a great event. My husband has been the co-chair along with his co-chair, Mike Fakelis, for the past 12 years, and it really becomes a family affair for all the parishioners in the church.
Can you tell us us about the work that goes into preparing an event like this and what makes it so particularly special?
We have about 110 volunteers that help make this happen. Our committee meets monthly, and now we're meeting bi-weekly because we're getting close. We're only 3 weeks away from the festival. And it's really a labor of love. It is our way to give back to our church, but also to give back to our community that has supported St. Haralambos and has supported the Greek Fest for so many years.
Can you tell us about the history of the festival, how long it's been going on, and the attendance?
This is the 42nd year of St. Haralambos having a festival. 12 years ago, it was rebranded as the Canton Greek Fest. So for 12 years, it's been a kind of Hellenic cultural experience with the food and the dancers and live music and Greek music being played. And so it's a different little feel that we have going on now. And just the history of the church, it started, we're 100 and I want to say 17 years in now for St. Haralambos. I mentioned it physically moved, and it was featured on the cover of Life magazine in 1958 when they cut parts of the church to make it bigger because the congregation had grown. We're now at around 500 families that support St. Haralambos and that support this festival as well.
And the church had to relocate, I understand, in the 1950s. Can you tell us about that?
It did. The population had grown, the parishioners had grown. There had been so many families, and the original church was small for the original people from Greece that came to settle in Canton. And so they came up with a plan that instead of building a new church from scratch, that they would take the front part, the altar part, and the narthex part, and physically move that up Market Avenue in downtown Canton to its current location at 25th and Harvard, and then they would just build out a bigger middle part. It was the first of its kind. Lots of people in Canton remember sitting on Market Avenue watching the church stroll by. The first part took, I believe it was 2 months to move. And then the second part, once they figured out certain things, they were able to do the second part a lot quicker. So it's a lot of piece of history. And our church tours give you the whole history of that move. So it's just a lot of things to experience at the festival.
We have a glowing recommendation in from Kathy. Kathy has emailed in and says that the Canton Greek Festival is one of Kathy's favorite Greek festivals, and you won't be disappointed if you do happen to make it out there June 4th through the 6th. Yes. Now, Georgia, for some people, their only experience with Greek culture might be from watching something like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Sure. Is that an accurate representation of the Greek culture and community?
The closeness of the family, that family unit, absolutely. There are some things that are slightly exaggerated, but it's a great movie, and it really just hits home how important our culture is. And this Canton Greek Fest is a way for us to share that culture with our community. There's a lot of history within the Greek culture, but our faith and our culture is intertwined together. And so we're able to do it through food and through the traditional dancing. And you really get a taste of what the Hellenic culture is all about.
Can you tell us more about that Hellenic dancing? I know that'll be a piece of the Greek festival.
Yes.
For people who haven't seen it yet. What can you expect?
You definitely have to come and see them. They, the St. Haralambos Hellenic dancers were started 41 years ago, and there is a beginner group, an intermediate group, a senior group, and this year there's an alumni group that will be performing as well. And so for the past 41 years, this group has really embodied the Greek culture and is able to present that and present dances from different parts of Greece. There's lots of different parts and different variations of certain dances, and so we're really proud of them. They travel internationally and perform as well, so they represent Canton and they represent St. Haralambos well, but they practice year-round every week, and it's a very dedicated group of instructors. Eleni Paxos, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law is Joanna Volis and Maria Kalisidis. They dedicate so much time to teaching these kids and really just having them understand where their roots are from, and through the medium of dance. So it's definitely an arts and cultural experience at the Canton Greek Fest.
There's also opportunities for the young ones to get involved. What do you have for people
Absolutely.
With the young ones?
We have a kids playground area that is a bouncy house area. We have a very talented face painter that is there with the kids, and it's a family-friendly event, so there's lots of food options for kids and just the dancing, and then just the kids playground, and then walk around the church and get to experience all of that. So definitely family-friendly for sure.
When you think about the Greek festival and who your audience members are, your attendees at it. Do you get a lot of people who this is maybe their first experience with Greek culture, or is it more of a gathering for people in the Greek community? What's that look like?
It is everybody and anybody. We have people that travel from Michigan and Pennsylvania and south of here to come to the Canton Greek Fest. From Buffalo, we had somebody last year that saw it and they wanted to come and experience it. It is definitely open to everyone. Our attendees come from everywhere. And like I said, it is our church's way of celebrating our culture and providing this opportunity for the community, the entire community, to come and experience a little part of Greece in Canton.
I know it's hard to put a pin on it, but I do want to ask you, what is a part of the Greek culture that you think people who maybe aren't as experienced with it might be surprised about or have not seen before? Is there a unique aspect to it that you can share with us?
I think right now, seeing how many generations have passed from the first people that came from Greece, how strong the culture still remains. And I get that sense when I'm walking around the festival and talking to people that they are really surprised that we've been able to maintain this cultural aspect of our heritage and really present it well to the community so that you don't have to be Greek to get up and dance and just be a part of it. It's just, it's a lot of fun. And some people don't get the opportunity to travel to Greece, although I highly recommend, but this is just a different way to experience all of that.
And our technical producer, Chris, has shared his first experience with the Greek culture was at the Canton Greek Fest.
Wonderful.
Our producer, Rachel, is also planning on going in a few days.
I appreciate
to
that.
Greece, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So
she's going to have a great time.
We'll have Rachel report back. She'll
Yes.
sample some of these snacks
sure.
and then report back.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to thank you for being here with us, Georgia. Tell us, when is the festival and what are the hours for people that want to come out?
Sure. The Canton Greek Fest is June 4th, 5th, and 6th in Canton, Ohio, at the corner of 25th and Harvard in Northwest Canton. It is 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. each day. Visit CantonGreekFest.com for all the menus, all the complete schedule, and all the different fun, exciting things that we have planned. We look forward to seeing everybody there.
Georgia Paxos, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, if you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU, and every episode of The Sound of Ideas is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. To get the last word on today's topics, email us at soi@ideastream.org and find us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Yesterday, we talked about skin cancer, which is the most often diagnosed type of cancer in the United States. We were clearing up misconceptions about it, including what you need to know about sunscreen. Beth wrote us on Instagram. In my experience, being a pale girl, cool, overcast days like we are currently experiencing are the days I often forget about sunscreen and end up with a burn and exposure to UV rays. It's my understanding that frequent sunburns can contribute to skin cancer risk. Thank you for sharing that, Beth, and a good reminder, even on those overcast days, we still got to get that sunscreen on. SPF 50, as the doctor told us. Now, tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, it's the Friday Reporters Roundtable with Mike McIntyre. This week, he's joined by IdeaStream reporters Abby Marshall and Matt Richmond in the studio, and Karen Kassler joins from the State House News Bureau in Columbus. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for keeping the conversation going with us here on The Sound of Ideas.